Hi, I'm Andrew. Welcome to Splash Page, home of overthinking the motivations of minor characters on Amazon's Invincible that barely got any screen time. Next up in our limited, but so far ongoing series, Aquarius, Fish King of the Sea. And here's your obligatory spoiler warning for Season 1 of Amazon's Invincible, with some comic book spoilers for later on in the story. Let's do a quick recap, like you even need one. Aquarius is one of the Guardians of the Globe, a team of 7 superheroes that protect planet Earth from danger and are a blatant ripoff of DC's Justice League. We have the fearless leader, the Immortal, a man who can never die so long as you glue his head back to his neck when you're done killing him. War Woman, Amazonian, CEO, and wielder of a ball on a stick. Darkwing, human billionaire with tech toys who, along with War Woman, co-funded the Guardians. Red Rush, the speedster with a head of glass. Green Ghost, who has the power to go immaterial and fly when she swallows a weird green gem. Martian Man, the only Martian on a planet of humans and a creature who can stretch over tall buildings in a single bound. And then we have Aquarius, the king of the fish. But he's so much more than that. Aquarius is half fish, half human, unlike Aquaman, who is half fish person, half human, which I guess would make him 3/4 human. But Aquarius has the head of a fish and the legs of a human, which you would think would make for the worst possible combination for swimming, but Aquarius makes it work.
Why couldn't she be the other kind of mermaid, with the fish part on top and the lady part on the bottom?
We only see him in the first episode, twice in battle, once fighting with the Guardians against the Mauler twins, and once fighting with the Guardians against Omni-man, and one more time sitting on his underwater throne waiting for something, anything to happen. In both of those fights, we get a look at his superpower, the ability to harness the awesome power of seawater. From his, can't really call those fingertips, hands, fins, from his fins. He uses this power to blast back an enemy or hurl something through a wall. His fighting style, on land at least, is definitely best suited for long-distance attacks. When in battle, he works closely with Martian Man, which makes sense, as they're both kind of out of place in one way or another. One is exiled from his home planet, and one is fighting on the land away from his underwater home. He doesn't get up close to the bad guys, mostly plays support, which fits in nicely with both his abilities and his personality, based on the portrayal of excitement in battle and boredom underwater. When we see him sitting on his throne, he looks bored out of his mind, until his watch beeps, and he's called to action. You can see the pure joy on his face to get an opportunity to fight alongside his friends. From this, it looks like we have a depressed monarch, forced into a mundane life of ruling an underwater kingdom due to his birth, when he'd rather be anywhere else, hanging out with his friends and getting into fights. And that's it. That's all we get of Aquarius from Season 1 of Invincible. But the comic book goes deeper into his society, at least, and this is where we get into some out-of-show spoilers. In issue 15 of the comic book, Invincible is brought underwater to marry Aquaria, the queen and widow of Aquarius, based on an old tradition that whosoever kills a woman's husband must marry the widow. But since Omni-man has left planet Earth, the responsibility falls to his next of kin, Invincible. When Mark arrives underwater, he's given a set of CMG, or compact mechanical gills, a device created by the fish people. I keep wanting to call them Atlantans, but they never call them that in the book, so I'm not going to call them that. I'll just keep going with fish people, I guess. These compact mechanical gills allow visitors to breathe underwater, which lets us know that their society has had plenty of contact with the people who live above the water. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put the time and energy and money into creating these devices to let people who don't breathe water visit their society. We also know that they've dealt with the people who live on land through some dialogue from Cecil, who promises Mark that they'll get him out of marrying the queen of the fish, but that for the time being, he has to play along, because the fish people have valuable natural resources. And of course, they control all of the ocean, which, if the people of Earth don't hand over Invincible, could become very troublesome to the world economy. Could I take a step back for a second? I'm writing a character study on a fish person, and the hardest part of this is coming up with ways to say fish people and people without sounding like a crazy person, because there's no word for Aquarius' society in the books or on the show. I literally just said the phrase people of the earth, which is not what you would use to describe humans as opposed to fish people. That's what you would use to differentiate us from aliens. And earthlings is wrong because the ocean is still part of the earth. And I can't keep saying people who live on the land and people who don't live in the sea, because let's face it, that just sounds ridiculous. So far, my only complaint with all of Kirkman's writing in Invincible is that he didn't name the society that Aquarius rules over so that I can say it succinctly and not sound like a nut job while I'm trying to make this video about a television show based on a comic book he started writing 20 years ago. Okay. Land dwellers sounds a little bit better. And since it's the only term used to describe the people who don't live underwater in the books, except for air breather, which especially in context sounds suspiciously racist, I'm going to stick to land dweller, which, for the record, I still think sounds stupid. Anyway, let's get back to Aquarius' unnamed underwater society. We find out that their first leader was also named Aquarius, Aquarius the First. So we can assume one of three things. Kings are either named after past kings at birth, they choose a royal name upon becoming king, or royal babies are all named Aquarius. Either way, this is a society based on royalty that goes back generations. We get some more information about their wedding ceremonies, which involve battle and chivalry. This is a martial society that puts physical fitness and battle capability above all. In order to be married to the queen, you must first defeat a depth dweller, then consummate the marriage in front of the entire audience. In the very short scene we see of Aquarius sitting on the throne, he seems bored with his life leading the people. Perhaps his position as king is that of a figurehead, someone to sit on the throne and act as a liaison who doesn't necessarily make any of the day-to-day laws, although this seems counterintuitive in a society that still puts so much emphasis on the martial arts, but it's a possibility. This might also just be a rare instance where Aquarius has nothing royal to take care of, and normally he's very busy administering undersea justice. But I can only go by what the writers and animators put on the screen, and this scene feels to me like the majority of his time is spent underwater, bored and lonely. A king not wanting to be a king isn't an unusual trope, from the Prince and the Pauper to the real-life George VI, who was the second in line to the throne and had no thoughts of even taking the throne until his brother stepped down. Or, more currently, Prince Harry, who stepped away from the royal family. He was far enough down the line of succession that he never really had a chance at becoming king, but even the royal life was too much for him. It's got to be hard to have aspirations that are forbidden by your career that you were forced into at birth through no choice of your own. Similar to Aquaman, Aquarius seems to be trapped between two worlds, that of his people and that of the land dwellers. Given what we see of him on the show, it's rather obvious that he prefers to hang out with the Guardians instead of ruling his people. Possibly because they look at him less as a king and more as a friend. I wonder how much the people of Aquarius' unnamed underwater society even care about the Guardians or the planet that they protect, and would much rather that their king stay underwater on his throne instead of fighting battles that have nothing to do with them. I think another good analogy for Aquarius would be King Richard the Lionheart, who loved being king, but only because it allowed him to go off to war. The majority of his time as king was spent off fighting in the Crusades or protecting his lands in France, spending very little time in the territories he was meant to be ruling. King Richard has been called a bad son, a bad husband, and a bad king, but a gallant and splendid soldier. Another biographer said of Richard that the glory he sought was that of victory rather than conquest. Now, I can't speak to Aquarius' abilities as a son, a husband, or a king, but as a soldier he seemed competent and comfortable. He didn't fight for land, money, or power, and maybe not even for justice. Honestly, I think Aquarius fought because that was his happy place, a place where he could show off his skills and spend time with his friends. I think that Aquarius, like Richard, much preferred battle over governing. And throughout history, there have been plenty of kings who didn't want to be king, but some people just happened to have power thrust upon them, and they learned to live with it. And as far as I can tell, until his death, Aquarius did exactly that. Thank you for watching. I really hope you liked the video. And if you like the music you're listening to right now, you can thank The Beat Farm, who let us use their music in our videos, and they're linked below in the description. Go and check them out. Until we meet again,